Good morning, good afternoon, good day. It's Patrick Lovell. It looks like it's October 5th, Wednesday, 2022, approximately 11:30 a.m. my time. And I found myself really intrigued with kind of this intersection of pretty much everything I'm in the midst of at the moment and what we're trying to achieve to erect the truth of what we had found at the con, which took a monumental effort to achieve, to bring it to the American people primarily and elevate it over the sea of madness and the sea of lies that have overrun and overwhelmed any of our ability to fully think critically given the nature of where we are. On 11/1/22, we are trying to bring as many people to the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C. to understand why the Federal Reserve is both the beginning and the end of everything that creates the world in which we live. I went on a monumental journey to discover that the intersection of everything is the reality that Federal Reserve Act 13.3 was used illegally to prop up a failing, bankrupt, corrupted to the gills financial system that buried the world intentionally through theft by deception, which is a massive criminal enterprise. And in the context of getting there, I went through this exercise today where I was trying to create, shall we say, a sort of metaphor for people to try to get their heads around. And I found myself really where it begins and ends. And that's the symbolism on the dollar. So a lot of people are insanely conspiratorial. Many of you think I might be insanely conspiratorial. The difference is I'm an investigative journalist that relies on facts and evidence to put together the details of stories that provide revelations that we all must come to understand. The entirety of media has failed us and its position of the fourth of state to hold power to account because media is not journalism. And I'll bring it full scope to the dollar bill. So a lot of people look at the dollar bill and they think conspiracy. Oh my God, what's the seeing eye? What is the pyramid? What does it symbolize? And a lot of people go to, well, it's the Illuminati is what a lot of people that are just insane go to because they can't cope with reality. But let me walk you through what exactly the dollar bill represents to put into stark clarity and focus what exactly we're all dealing with. So when you look at the dollar bill, the first thing you need to understand is that it was created by three founders of our founding fathers, three members of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams. And they created symbolism, which was, of course, what every nation does in terms of their currency, because it's got to be reflective of what that nation stands for. And so the United States had just come out of a revolutionary war to purge tyranny from its midst, to pursue and achieve liberty and justice, quite frankly, for all was the concept and um, the focus, the objective. And so the all-seeing eye is simply the notion that came out of Christianity, which is the benevolence of God, to look over with compassion humanity. The idea that we will, through our own divine right of free will achieve greatness, quite frankly, through what the pyramid represents, which is the foundation and stability that when you look throughout the dollar bill, you'll find representative of the original 13 states that overcame tyranny to birth liberty. The clouds above the eagle, that host the 13 stars represent the the elevation, the overcome, the glory, and the achievement of liberty. The eagle itself is a symbol of strength. Of course, it's an American bird, but in its talons, in the right talons, you'll find 13 olive branches that represent peace. In the left talon, you'll represent 13 arrows that represent war. The expression that we want to achieve and live within peace and harmony with other nations in the world, but don't think we won't fight to the death for our liberty, which was, of course, on display because of what happened during the revolution. Further, you will find that there are 13 steps of the pyramid, and that there's a horizontal bar that holds the pyramid, which is representative of the federal government, and then the 13 stripes represent the 13 that are vertical stripes, represent the 13 colonies. Further to that, there's two Latin phrases that are on the dollar bill. The first is anet copus, which means God has looked favorably on the actions of liberty. And then, of course, e pluribus unum, which is from many come one. Now, interestingly, if you add up the characters of each one of those Latin phrases, they are both 13 characters apiece. Again, once again, the 13 original colonies that became the 13 states for liberty and justice for all. So the dollar bill is our currency. It's representative of the fight and the revolution that took place to free us from tyranny, so that all men in this country that we hold self-evident afford the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It took us 246 years to battle significant fights in so many different directions to be able to ultimately achieve that, for better or for worse, against all sorts of contradictions that we ultimately overcame. But 246 years later, because it's 246 years from 1776, we're in a situation right now that the con reveals to you that everything has been turned upside down, inside out, to actually create what many of you are so fearful of in the conspiratorial scenario. Yes, there is a man behind the curtain. Yes, there is a cabal that operates the power in the shadows for a process that is exactly inverted, perverted of what liberty and justice based on the integrity of law represents. And that's our financial system. Our financial system are villains of deception and corruption that have overturned everything and hijacked all aspects of government to use the full faith and the credit of the United States to fuel its hyena binge. I was thinking yesterday, what's the difference between a heroin addict, a junkie, and our financial system? I think you can redeem a junkie. The financial system is so completely addicted to quantitative easing over the course of the last 13 years that they have stopped at nothing to double down, triple down, quadruple down on the exact same formulation of what we show you in the con that nobody else has. Again, media is not journalism. It's entertainment to separate us so that we do not know the truth. Have you ever noticed that the only media that ever talks about anything that's happening with regards to finance is CNBC? And CNBC or Fox Business or a handful of others. But what do? Do they tell you the stuff that I'm telling you? No, they prop up stocks and they just tell you what's going on, and then sometimes they wring their hands and sometimes they get excited because of movements in this financial system that can do more tricks than you can possibly imagine in the shadows based on these casino antics, based on free money from the Fed. The fuel, the drug, is free money from the Fed that goes into bond purchases where there's no underwriting, and billions of dollars of fraud get to go back to the Federal Reserve, and in the case of the housing industry, probably wind up in some of its government-sponsored enterprises. That is a whole nother story, but that's all smoke and mirrors and tricks. And the way they were able to do this is they got They got the nation into desperate straits. They set the nation up after 4 decades of getting rid of the golden goose, and then ultimately created a fraud scheme because that's how everybody in the system got paid, particularly the CEOs, through a gigantic racketeering enterprise. And it collapsed the world. And then it saved itself with free money from the Fed. And now the dollar bill, literally, according to the UN, because we're the world's reserve currency, if interest rates go up according to them, it's going to create an international catastrophe. So in the end, the dollar is God. So many people in our society depend on currency for survival. We all do, except for those that are so independent that we can live on our own. And that's a whole nother story. But those very few of us that will stop at nothing to bend as hard as they can to get as much as they can, no matter what, have absolute control, which is tyranny. It's the divine rights of kings. It doesn't matter if it's the pharaohs. It doesn't matter if it's King George III. It doesn't matter if it's the plantation owners or if it's BlackRock. The outcome is the same. You are chattel that is expendable unless you have the strength, the fortitude, and the knowledge to be a citizen. And all of that is on display on our dollar bill because it represents everything that gives this country the ability to do what it's supposed to do. But you have to be informed. There is only one piece of work that puts it all together to show you the largest criminal conspiracy and cover up in history that was covered up. Corruption births fascism. If we want our country back, we have to understand the truth, and you have to trust me. I don't know why I'm the guy that has to bring you this information, but I went through hell. I sacrificed everything to do it. Please open your mind to the truth. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's not rocket science, it's racketeering, and everything, the future of our republic, the future of the dignity of law, the future of the American dream and upward mobility and the ability to provide for our families and to do things that our founders gloriously sacrificed everything to bestow upon us. It is our duty to pick up the sword and the shield and the olive branches and the quivers to do our right to become citizens. We're losing time to do this peacefully. We can only do this if we overcome the corruption and the noise pollution that prevents us from knowing the truth. Onwards and upwards.